It's hard to go to school in the middle of a war. In the midst of fighting or fear of violence, whether from a civil war as in Syria, or the persistent threat of terrorism as in northern Nigeria because of a group called Boko Haram, life changes. What was normal largely disappears. Schools often are among the first affected. When teachers and students flee from violence and war, they leave their schools too. Sometimes violence and war comes to schools. Armies or rebel groups frequently take over schools for their own violent purposes, such as for storing weapons or using as prisons. The threat of violence sometimes stops governments and communities from building schools in the first place because they think that the schools might be taken over or will have to be abandoned when fighting starts. Sometimes teachers refuse to work in conflict areas because they're understandably afraid they might get killed or lose their jobs if they have to flee. As many as half of all kids who aren't in school worldwide live in war torn countries. War is a major reason why kids aren't in school. War continues to affect kids' ability to go to school even after the fighting has stopped. It's hard to imagine being in school after your home was burned down, or a parent or sibling was killed, or you're living in constant fear that violence will start again. It's hard to stay in a school if you and your family are constantly running from outbreaks of fighting. Many refugee camps, the places people live after they fled their homes and sometimes even their countries, either don't have schools at all or have schools that are bursting with students and short on teachers. Helping kids who are forced out of their communities by war or natural disasters stay in school is an area where we haven't made a lot of progress. The world needs to do more to figure out how best to help children who are victims of wars or natural disasters get an education, feel safe, and recover so that they can lead normal, healthy lives after horrifying experiences. In 2015, there are more refugees than at any point since World War II because there are more violent conflicts in more places. Although it's not clear what the best answers are to support people, especially kids, who will likely go home when the fighting stops, or to support people who stay in refugee camps or the countries they fled to, there are lots of people and organizations thinking about these questions and working to help families and children in refugee camps around the world today. Someone on the front lines of such work is Joseph Munyambanza, originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo. He's motivated by his own story to help kids feel safe and get educated even in dangerous situations. When Joseph was 6, violent conflict forced his family to flee across the border to a refugee camp in Uganda. When he finished the camp's primary school, he received a scholarship to go to a secondary school in Uganda outside of the camp. There were no great options in the camp. Unfortunately, the secondary school didn't go past grade 10. So, in 2005, when Joseph was 14 and wanted to keep going to school, he and a group of friends started an organization called Koburwas to educate themselves and other young refugees from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi, Uganda, Rwanda, and Sudan, who at the time were living in Uganda. That's where Koburwas comes from. It's a mashup of all of those countries' names. Joseph believed that with tutoring and support, more refugee kids would go to and stay in school, if there were schools to go to, or even go back to school if they'd dropped out. That faith was clearly well founded. Goburwas started by supporting dozens of refugee kids in pursuing their education, particularly at the secondary level, and has gone on to support hundreds more. Joseph also expanded Koburwas's mission to help in the recovery of girls and young women who had been victims of violence during a war or tragically even while living in the refugee camp. Like in Peggy's story, I first heard Joseph's at CGIU. In 2013, Joseph talked then about his plans to return to Uganda to get more kids in school and to change farming for refugees in the same way he's changing education. Today, Joseph, a new college graduate, is back in Uganda and hard at work. To learn more about Koburwas and how you can get involved, please visit the website koburwas.org.